businessman pretended to sleep and left the safe open, but froze when he saw what the nanny did. Richard Thompson felt the weight of suspicion growing in his chest with each passing day, after being robbed by his previous nanny, who had taken not only money but also some jewelry that belonged to his late wife. The 32-year-old businessman had lost faith in people. That Tuesday afternoon, he pretended to doze off in the beige leather armchair in the living room, keeping his eyes half open to observe every move of Emily, the new nanny he had hired just a week ago. The wall safe was deliberately left open, displaying stacks of cash he had left in plain sight as an irresistible temptation. Emily Parker, a 27-year-old woman with curly hair tied in a low bun, held little Ethan in her arms as she walked around the room. The 8-month-old baby whimpered softly, and she rocked him gently, whispering a lullaby Richard didn't recognize. The businessman's heart raced when he saw Emily slowly approach the safe. Her hands trembled imperceptibly as she stopped in front of the open compartment, and Richard braced himself mentally for yet another disappointment, another betrayal. But what happened next left him completely stunned. Emily glanced around the room, checking if she was alone, and then began pulling out some crumpled bills from her own pocket. With extreme care not to wake Ethan, she placed the money inside the safe, adding it to the existing stacks. "May the Lord protect this family," she whispered, making the sign of the cross with her free hand. "And may this little angel never lack what he needs." Richard remained motionless, pretending to sleep, but his mind raced, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. Why would an employee put her own money into her employer's safe? In the following days, he repeated the same ritual, pretending to nap in the armchair while discreetly observing Emily's movements. To his astonishment, she continued depositing small amounts into the safe, always accompanied by a silent prayer. It was on Thursday that Richard decided to investigate further. He took advantage of a moment when Emily had taken Ethan for a bath and checked the safe. There was at least $200 more than he had originally left. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. On Friday, after Emily had left for home, Richard decided to follow his instincts. There was something about that woman's dedication that touched a deep wound in his heart, a wound he had tried to keep closed ever since his wife Sarah had passed away due to complications during childbirth. Driving discreetly, Richard followed Emily to the bus stop. To his surprise, she didn't board any bus. Instead, she began a long walk through the streets of New York City, carrying a heavy bag and occasionally stopping to rest. For over an hour, Richard trailed her from a distance until she arrived at a small house on the outskirts of Queens. The place was humble but well kept, with potted plants on the porch and clothes hanging in the yard. That night, Richard couldn't shake the image from his mind. Why did Emily walk so far? Why did she put money in his safe? And most importantly, why was she so devoted to little Ethan, treating him as if he were her own child? On Saturday morning, Richard decided to try a different test. He spread some bills on the living room table, pretending to be worried about finances. When Emily arrived, he acted preoccupied, sighing loudly and commenting about household expenses. "Is everything all right, Mr. Richard?" asked Emily, with genuine concern in her voice. "Oh, Emily, it's just some company papers. Nothing serious," he replied, carefully watching her reaction. Throughout the day, he noticed how Emily discreetly glanced at the bills on the table and how her expression grew more thoughtful with each passing hour. In the afternoon, when he pretended to sleep again, he saw her place a larger amount in the safe, this time accompanied by a longer prayer. "Lord, I know it's not much, but it's what I can offer," she murmured. "This man has suffered so much, and this baby shouldn't go without. Please bless this family." Richard felt a lump in his throat. Emily believed he was in financial trouble and was trying to help with her own salary, which certainly wasn't high. The situation grew more complicated the following Monday, when something unexpected happened. Ethan, who was just starting to babble his first words, looked straight at Emily and said clearly, "Mommy." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily turned red, clearly embarrassed, while Richard felt a confusing mix of emotions. The baby had called the nanny Mommy. "No, sweetheart," Emily said softly, kissing Ethan's forehead. "I'm Emily. Your mommy is in heaven with the angels." But Ethan insisted, repeating the words several times throughout the day, always looking at Emily with a radiant smile. The young woman gently tried to correct him, but the child seemed to have decided she was his mother. Richard watched these interactions with a heavy heart. On one hand, he was grateful for Emily's dedication to his son. On the other, a pang of jealousy and confusion struck him. How could Ethan grow so attached to someone he'd known for such a short time? On Tuesday night, Richard was awakened by persistent crying from Ethan's room. He got up to check and found Emily already there, holding the baby, who was clearly feverish. "Mr. Richard," she exclaimed, relieved to see him. "Ethan has a fever. I already gave him the medicine you told me about, but he won't stop crying." Together, they spent the night caring for the child. Richard watched as Emily remained calm, constantly checking his temperature, offering water, and softly singing to soothe Ethan. "How did you learn to take care of babies?" Richard asked during one of the pauses. Emily hesitated before answering. "I took care of my younger siblings since I was little. My mother always worked hard to support us." There was something in her tone that suggested much more behind that simple answer, but Richard didn't press further at the time. When dawn came and Ethan's fever finally broke, Richard found Emily asleep in the chair beside the crib, one hand resting on the child's stomach. The scene deeply touched his heart, reminding him of how Sarah used to be so protective of Ethan during her pregnancy. He decided it was time to learn more about this woman who cared for his son with such love. On Wednesday, Richard pretended to leave for work early but stayed hidden, observing Emily's morning routine. He saw how she carefully prepared the bottle, checking the temperature multiple times, how she sang to Ethan during diaper changes, how she carried him around the house, showing him the pictures on the wall and explaining each detail as if he could understand. "Look, Ethan," she said, pointing to a photo of Sarah. "This is your mommy. She was so beautiful, wasn't she? She's watching over you from heaven." Richard felt his eyes well up with tears. Emily wasn't just caring for Ethan physically, she was keeping Sarah's memory alive. That afternoon, when he officially returned from work, Richard decided to raise Emily's salary. He prepared an envelope with extra money and handed it to her. "Mr. Richard, there must be some mistake," she said, counting the bills. "This is more than we agreed on." "There's no mistake. You deserve it for the exceptional work you're doing with Ethan." To his surprise, Emily politely refused the extra money. "Sir, I truly appreciate your kindness, but I can't accept it. You already pay me what I need. There are people who need it more than I do." Richard was stunned. What kind of person turned down a raise, especially someone who clearly didn't have abundant financial resources? That night, he couldn't stop thinking about Emily's reaction. He decided it was time to dig deeper into her past. On Thursday, Richard discreetly hired a private investigator, not because he distrusted Emily, but because he needed to understand who this woman really was, someone who was becoming so important in his son's life. The results came in on Friday and left Richard completely shaken. Emily Parker was exactly who she claimed to be. The eldest of 5 siblings, she had lost her father at 14 and had worked ever since to support her family. Her mother, Mrs. Mary Parker, was ill and needed expensive medication. Emily kept 3 younger siblings in school and walked 2 hours a day to save on transportation. But what struck Richard the most was discovering that Emily had recently been offered a nanny position with a wealthy family in Beverly Hills at 3 times his pay. She had turned it down. When asked why, according to the report, she had replied, "I can't abandon a child who's already lost his mother. He needs stability in his life." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Richard spent the entire weekend reflecting on what he'd learned. On Monday, he did something he hadn't done since Sarah's passing. He came home early to spend time with Ethan. He found Emily teaching the baby to clap, and they both laughed when Ethan managed to coordinate his movements for the first time. "Eyes growing up so fast," Richard remarked, sitting on the floor beside them. "It's true. Yesterday he tried rolling over in his crib, Soon he'll be crawling all over the house, Emily replied, her smile lighting up her entire face. Richard watched how Ethan reacted to both of them. The baby looked from one to the other as if trying to understand their family dynamic. And when Emily picked him up, Ethan said again, "Mommy!" This time, Richard didn't feel jealousy. Instead, a deep realization struck him. Ethan was forming healthy bonds. After losing his mother so young, he was finding a maternal figure in Emily. "You don't have to correct him every time," Richard said, surprising himself. Emily looked at him, confused. "Sir? If Ethan wants to call you Mommy, maybe it's because that's how he sees you. And maybe that's not a bad thing." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she tried to maintain her professional composure. "Mr. Richard, I don't want to overstep. I don't want to... I know my place here." "And what is your place, Emily?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. On Tuesday, Richard made a decision. He began intentionally leaving small amounts of money around the house, $20 bills, $50 bills in obvious places, on the coffee table, the kitchen counter, the stairs. Without fail, by the end of the day, all the money was deposited in the safe, along with Emily's own small personal contributions. The final test came on Wednesday. Richard left a $100 bill on the floor of Ethan's room, as if it had fallen from his pocket. Later, when he pretended to be asleep in the armchair, he saw Emily find the money. She picked it up, examined it carefully, and then walked over to where Richard was sleeping. "Mr. Thompson," she called softly. "Mr. Thompson, are you awake?" When he didn't respond, Emily gently placed the bill in his shirt pocket and went back to her tasks. Richard slowly opened his eyes, pretending to wake up. The bill was in his pocket, exactly where Emily had put it. At that moment, he knew he had found something rare in this world, a genuinely honest and dedicated person. On Thursday, something happened that completely changed the household dynamic. Richard received a call from the school where Emily had studied. The principal was organizing a tribute for former students who had excelled in their professional lives and wanted to include Emily. "Mr. Thompson, Emily Parker was one of the most special students we've ever had. Even while facing difficulties at home, she never missed class and always helped the younger students. We heard she's working as a nanny now, and we want to honor her for the dedication she's always shown." Richard was moved by the story. He decided he would attend the tribute, but wouldn't tell Emily beforehand. The event took place on Friday evening. Richard hired a temporary nanny to look after Ethan and headed to the school, located in the same neighborhood where Emily lived. The ceremony was simple but touching. When they called Emily's name, Richard saw genuine surprise on her face. She hadn't expected the recognition. "Emily Parker," the principal said, "represents the very best of our youth. Even in the face of adversity, she never lost her kindness or determination. Today, she dedicates her life to caring for a child who lost his mother, and we know she's doing it with all the love in the world." When Emily stepped onto the stage to receive her certificate, Richard saw tears in her eyes. In her brief speech, she thanked the school and ended by saying something that deeply touched his heart. "What life has taught me most is that family isn't just about sharing blood, but about sharing love. Today I care for a child who has become the center of my life, and I hope I can be for him a little of what you all were for me, a safe harbor." After the ceremony, Richard approached Emily. She was surprised and slightly embarrassed to see him there. "Mr. Thompson, what are you doing here? And Ethan?" "Ethan is being well taken care of. I came because I wanted to see the tribute, and I'm very proud of you." The smile that lit up Emily's face made the whole evening worth it. "You didn't have to come," she said, still emotional. "Yes, I did, because I realized I didn't truly know the person taking care of my son." On the way home, Richard offered Emily a ride. During the drive, she shared more about her family, her dreams, and her fears. "Mr. Thompson, can I confess something?" she asked as they stopped at the traffic light near her house. "Of course. From the very first day you hired me, I felt Ethan needed more than just physical care. He needed a mother's love, and I've always wanted to be a mother. Taking care of him has been the fulfillment of a dream I never thought I'd have." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. Emily's honesty was overwhelming. Why did you think you could never be a mother? Who would want to build a family with someone like me? I don't have a college degree, I come from a humble background, and my whole life is dedicated to caring for others. Besides, I don't even know if I could support a child. Emily, Richard said, stopping the car in front of her house, you already are a mother. Ethan chose you. And if you have the courage to accept it, I'd like to make that official. Emily stared at him, not fully understanding what he meant. What do you mean, sir? I'm talking about adoption, that you legally become Ethan's mother, not as an employee but as family. The silence that followed was long and heavy with emotion. I don't know what to say, murmured Emily, tears in her eyes. You don't have to answer now. Think about it. That night, Richard barely slept. He had made a proposal that could completely change the lives of everyone involved, but for the first time since Sarah's departure, he felt he was making the right decision. On Saturday morning, Emily arrived earlier than usual. She was visibly nervous and carried a different bag. Good morning, Mr. Richard. I brought a few things to show you, if I may. Richard was intrigued. They sat in the living room while Ethan played on the rug with his toys. Emily opened the bag and pulled out a thick notebook with a floral cover, already well worn. Since the first day I started caring for Ethan, I've written everything down in this notebook, she explained, opening the pages. Every special moment, every milestone, every new thing he learns. Richard took the notebook and began flipping through it. Each page was a love letter to Ethan's growth. Emily had meticulously recorded his first smile, his early attempts to roll over, his reactions to different foods, the songs that soothed him most. Ethan smiled for the first time today when I sang the song my grandma used to sing to me, read one entry. I wonder if he feels loved. Today Ethan slept through the night. I worry he might miss his mother in his dreams, said another. Ethan tried to reach for my hand while I was singing. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest from joy. Richard felt tears welling up with every page. That notebook was proof of the unconditional love Emily had for Ethan. Why do you write all this down? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. Because I want Ethan to know when he grows up about every happy moment he lived. I want him to know he was deeply loved from the very beginning, Emily replied, stroking the baby's hair. At that moment, Richard knew his decision was right. Emily wasn't just a dedicated nanny. She was a mother in every way that mattered. Emily, about our conversation yesterday. Mr. Richard, I thought about it all night, she interrupted, and my answer is yes. If you truly believe I can be a good mother to Ethan, I accept. But I have one condition. Richard was surprised. A condition? What condition? I want to keep working. I don't want to depend on you financially. I want to contribute to supporting the family we're forming. The word family hung in the air like a promise of new beginnings. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On Sunday, Richard decided it was time to formally introduce Emily to his family. He called his mother, Mrs. Margaret, a 68-year-old woman who had been very close to Sarah. Mom, I'd like you to meet Emily. She's going to become Ethan's mother. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean, Richard? Did you get married without telling me? It's not like that, Mom. It's more complicated than it sounds. Can we have lunch here on Sunday? That way you can meet Emily and I'll explain everything. Mrs. Margaret arrived promptly at noon on Sunday, carrying her traditional Sunday dessert and a curious expression. Emily was clearly nervous. She had gone all out with lunch and checked the house repeatedly to make sure everything was perfect. Mom, this is Emily, Richard introduced. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Margaret, Emily said, offering her hand. I've heard so much about you. Mrs. Margaret watched Emily closely. In that way only mothers know how to do. Then her eyes turned to Ethan, who was in Emily's arms and smiling brightly at the visitor. And this is my little grandson, said Mrs. Margaret, reaching out for Ethan. To everyone's surprise, Ethan hesitated. He looked at Emily as if asking for permission before going into his grandmother's arms. You can go, sweetheart, Emily said softly. It's Grandma Margaret. The interaction didn't go unnoticed by Mrs. Margaret, who immediately understood the dynamic between Emily and Ethan. During lunch, the conversation flowed naturally. Mrs. Margaret asked several questions about Emily's family, her previous job, and her plans for the future. "Tell me about your mother," Mrs. Margaret requested. "My mother's name is Mary. She worked her whole life as a cleaner to raise 5 children on her own. Now she's sick and can't work anymore," Emily replied with evident pride in her voice. "And you take care of her too?" "Yes, ma'am, along with my siblings. Family is family, right? No matter the hardships." Mrs. Margaret smiled, approving of the answer. After lunch, while Emily was in the room changing Ethan, Mrs. Margaret pulled Richard aside. "Son, this young woman is special. I see the way she looks at Ethan and the way he looks at her. This isn't an employer-employee relationship. It's the love between a mother and son. So you approve?" "I approve more than that. I think you've found a treasure. This young woman has a heart as big as the world. But I have one question. Are you doing this just for Ethan, or are there other feelings involved?" His mother's question made Richard pause and reflect. Was there something beyond Ethan's well-being? When he thought of Emily, he felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt since Sarah. "Mum, I don't know. I just know that ever since she arrived, the house has come alive again. Ethan is happy, I'm more at ease, and you've fallen in love with her," Mrs. Margaret finished with a knowing smile. Richard turned red but didn't deny it. "It's very complicated, Mom. She's an employee, I'm the employer. There are social and economic differences." "Richard, Mrs. Margaret said, taking her son's hands. "True love doesn't care about social class. Your wife taught me that. Sarah was the daughter of simple shopkeepers, and you were happy. What matters is a person's character." On Monday, Richard called Emily into his home office for a serious talk. "Emily, I want you to know my adoption proposal is sincere, but I need to be honest about something else." Emily looked at him attentively, waiting. "Over the past few days, I've realized my feelings for you go beyond gratitude for how you care for Ethan. I've fallen in love with you." The silence that followed felt endless. "Mr. Richard," Emily finally said, "I have feelings for you too, but I'm afraid this will complicate everything. What if it doesn't work out? What if you grow tired of me? Ethan has already lost one mother. Emily, I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise I'll fight every day to make it work. You've made me believe in love again, in family, in the possibility of happiness." Emily moved closer to him slowly. "What if your family doesn't accept me? What if your friends judge us? Then they're not truly my family and friends. Those who really love me will want my happiness." At that moment, they kissed for the first time. It was a kiss full of promises, fears, hopes, and true love. But not everything would be simple. On Tuesday, Richard received an unexpected visit from his younger brother, Michael, a successful lawyer who always had strong opinions about social differences. "Richard, I've heard rumors you're getting involved with the maid. Please tell me it's just gossip." "It's not gossip, Michael. Emily is going to legally become Ethan's mother, and we're planning to get married." Michael was visibly irritated. "Have you lost your mind? A poor nanny. Richard, you're a respected businessman. This will harm your reputation, your business, and Ethan. What kind of substitute mother can an uneducated woman be?" "Watch your words, Michael," said Richard, feeling his anger rise. "Emily is one of the most educated people I know. Education isn't measured by diplomas, but by character." "Wake up, Richard. She's clearly after your money. It's obvious, a poor woman falling for a rich man, please." "You know what's obvious, Michael? That you don't know Emily. She put her own money into my safe, thinking I was in trouble. She refused a raise. She turned down a job paying 3 times more so she wouldn't abandon Ethan." Michael shook his head in disbelief. "This could all be an act, Richard. These women are clever." "Enough!" Richard exploded. "You're in my home insulting the woman I love and the mother of my child. If you can't respect my choices, you can leave." The argument was overheard by Emily, who was upstairs with Ethan. She came down slowly, carrying the baby. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I didn't mean to interrupt, but Ethan is crying, and I think he sensed the tension." Michael looked Emily up and down with barely disguised contempt. "So you're the famous Emily," he said. "I hope you're enjoying your good fortune." "Michael," Richard warned, but Emily remained calm and dignified. "Mr. Michael, I imagine you're concerned about your brother and Ethan. That's understandable, but I can assure you my love for this family is real. I don't need Richard's wealth to be happy. I only need his love and Ethan's." "Pretty words," Michael retorted, "but let's see how long they last when the novelty wears off." After Michael left, Richard hugged Emily, who was visibly shaken. "Don't pay attention to what he said. Michael has always been arrogant. Richard, maybe he's right about some things. Maybe I'm really not the best choice for you and Ethan." "Emily, look at me," Richard said, lifting her chin. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to us. Don't let his words plant doubts in you." But the seed of insecurity had been sown. In the days that followed, Emily became more withdrawn, questioning every gesture, every word, every decision. On Thursday, things got worse when Richard received a visit from his cousin Jennifer and her husband Robert, a high society couple from New York City. "Dear cousin," Jennifer said with false sweetness, "I heard you found yourself some new company." "If you're referring to Emily, yes. She's going to be my wife and Ethan's mother." Jennifer and Robert exchanged meaningful glances. "Richard, as your family, we feel it's our duty to warn you about certain risks," Robert said. "Social differences could cause problems in the future. Your social circles, your business. Not to mention Ethan needs a maternal figure suited to the family's status," Jennifer added. "Someone who can relate to the other mothers at school, who understands our world." Emily, who was in the kitchen making coffee, heard every word. She felt diminished, inadequate, out of place. When the visitors left, Richard found Emily silently crying in Ethan's room. "They're right, Richard," she said through tears. "I don't belong in your world. I don't know how to dress for social events. I don't know high society rules. I don't have a college degree." "Emily, you're talking nonsense. My world is right here in this house with you and Ethan. The rest doesn't matter." "It does matter. Ethan will grow up, attend expensive schools, mix with children from wealthy families. How will I relate to those people? How am I supposed to help with schoolwork I don't even understand?" Richard realized his family's words were destroying Emily's self-esteem. He needed to do something to turn things around. "Emily, do you want to go to college?" She looked at him surprised. "I've always wanted to, but I never had the means." "Then let's make it happen. You pick the major, I'll pay, not as charity, but as an investment in our family." "Richard, I can't accept this." "You can, and you will. Not to please me or my family, but because you deserve to have all your dreams come true." On Friday, something unexpected happened that completely changed the course of the story. Richard got a desperate call from Emily during work hours. "Richard, I need your help. My mum got sick and is in the hospital. I don't have money for the tests the doctors ordered." Without hesitation, Richard cancelled all his appointments and rushed to the public hospital where Mrs. Mary was admitted. He found Emily in the hallway, holding Ethan and crying desperately. Her 3 younger siblings stood beside her, just as distraught. "What happened?" Richard asked, hugging Emily. "She fainted at home this morning. The doctors say it might be her heart, but they need expensive tests to be sure. Tests the public hospital doesn't have." Richard didn't think twice. He found the attending doctor and arranged for Mrs. Mary's immediate transfer to the best private hospital in the city. "Sir, I can't afford this," Emily protested. "No one's asking you to pay. Mrs. Mary is my family now, and family takes care of each other." For the next 2 days, Emily's family practically lived at the hospital. Richard stayed by their side, organizing care shifts, bringing food and talking to doctors. It was during one of those long waits that he got to know Emily's siblings better. Jason, 16, who worked part-time to help at home, but hadn't given up his dream of becoming an engineer. Rachel, 14, the most studious in the family, who wanted to be a teacher. And Max, just 12, who took care of the house while everyone was working. "Mr. Richard," Jason said during a conversation, "I want you to know my sister is the most special person in the world. She gave up her own dreams to take care of us after our dad left." "What do you mean?" "She had a scholarship for a degree in education. Rachel explained. But she turned it down because she couldn't stop working. She said she had to see all of us raised and our mom well taken care of first. Richard's heart ached. Emily had sacrificed her future for her family, yet she still devoted herself entirely to Ethan. By Saturday night, Mrs. Mary was stable and out of danger. The issue had been an arrhythmia caused by stress and poor diet, treatable with medication and dietary changes. When they finally had a moment to talk, Mrs. Mary pulled Richard aside. "Young man, I want to thank you for everything you've done for my family, but I have to ask, what are your intentions with my daughter?" Richard smiled. It was a question any mother would ask. "Mrs. Mary, I love your daughter and want to marry her. I want her to be my wife and the mother of my son, and I want to take care of this family as if they were my own." "And does your family accept Emily?" Richard hesitated. Mrs. Mary noticed. "Some don't," he admitted, "but I'm willing to stand against anything for her." "My boy," Mrs. Mary said, taking Richard's hands, "you seem like a good man, but I want you to know my daughter has already suffered a lot in life. If you ever doubt your feelings, please be honest with her. Don't make her suffer out of pity or gratitude." "Mrs. Mary, I swear my feelings are true. Emily made me believe in love again." On Monday, Richard made a decision that surprised everyone. He gathered his entire family, mother, brother, cousins, for a dinner at his home. "I want everyone to officially meet Emily as my fiancée and the future mother of Ethan," he announced when they were all together. The mood in the room grew tense. Michael rolled his eyes. Jennifer whispered something to her husband, but Mrs. Margaret smiled in approval. "Richard," Michael said, "are you sure you want to do this? There's still time to reconsider." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Richard replied firmly. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan, who was in Emily's arms, began to cry. Instinctively, several people reached out to take him, but the baby only calmed down when Emily rocked him, softly singing the same lullaby Richard had heard before. The room fell into deep silence. Everyone witnessed the genuine connection between Emily and Ethan. "No matter what any of you think," Richard said, looking directly at Michael, "Emily is the mother Ethan chose, and she's the woman I chose. Anyone who can't accept that, unfortunately, won't be part of our lives." Mrs. Margaret was the first to stand and embrace Emily. "Welcome to the family, my dear," she said, tears in her eyes. Gradually, other family members approached, some still reluctant but respecting Richard's decision. Michael was the last to step forward. "Emily," he said, clearly embarrassed, "I apologize for what I said last week. It was inappropriate and prejudiced." "Thank you, Mr. Michael," Emily replied gracefully. "I understand your concerns for Richard and Ethan. I hope to have the chance to prove my love for them is sincere." That night, after the family left, Richard and Emily sat on the living room couch. Ethan slept peacefully in her arms. "I think the hardest part is over," Richard said. "Richard, I'm scared," Emily confessed. "Scared of what?" "Of not being enough, of not being the wife and mother you both deserve, of somehow ruining everything." Richard cupped Emily's face in his hands. "You're already more than enough. You're perfect just as you are. And you know why? Because you love truly. Not out of obligation, not for gain, but because your heart is generous." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched you for months. I saw how you put money in my safe, thinking I was struggling. I saw how you care for Ethan as if he were your own son. I saw how you gave up your dreams to take care of your family. That kind of love can't be faked, Emily." That night, they began officially planning their wedding and Ethan's adoption. On Tuesday, Richard hired the best lawyers to expedite the adoption process. He wanted everything done as correctly and quickly as possible. "Mr. Thompson," the lawyer said, "the process may take a few months, but since the child has no registered mother and you're the biological father, there shouldn't be complications." At the same time, Richard enrolled Emily in the education program at one of the best private universities in the city. "Richard, this must cost a fortune," she protested. "It's worth every penny. Besides, I want Ethan to be proud of his mother, the teacher." On Wednesday, an unexpected visit nearly ruined everything. Emily's biological mother, Melissa, who had abandoned the family when Emily was just 5, showed up at their door. "Emily, my daughter, the woman exclaimed, trying to hug her. Emily froze. Richard immediately sensed the tension and positioned himself protectively beside his fiancée. "What do you want here, Melissa?" Emily asked coldly. "I heard you got a good job, that you're marrying a wealthy man. I came to see my daughter, who's made something of herself." "After 22 years, said Emily bitterly. "Where were you when I needed a mother? Where were you when I had to take care of my siblings alone?" Melissa tried to justify herself, but it was obvious she was there for financial gain. "Emily, sweetheart, I know I made mistakes, but I'm your mother. Can't I even meet my grandson?" "Ethan is not your grandson," Emily said firmly, "and you're not my mother. My mother is Mrs. Mary, who raised me with love and sacrifice." The situation escalated when Melissa started making demands. "Emily, as your birth mother, I have rights. I want monthly financial support. After all, you're now part of a wealthy family." Richard felt his anger rising, but Emily stopped him from interfering. "Melissa, you have no rights over my life. You abandoned 5 children to live your own life. You don't get to show up now and take advantage of my success." "You've always been ungrateful," Melissa shouted. "You're denying help to your own mother." "I'm denying help to a stranger who shares my DNA," Emily shot back. "My family is Mrs. Mary and my siblings. It's Richard and Ethan. You're not part of it." Melissa stormed off in a rage, making empty threats about legal rights and family shame. After she left, Emily broke down in tears. "Richard, I don't want that woman to ruin our happiness." "She won't ruin anything," Richard assured her. "Real family is there in the hard times, not just the good ones." On Thursday, Richard decided to do something special. He organized a dinner at Mrs. Mary's house, who was recovering well, to officially announce the engagement in front of Emily's family. The entire Parker family was there: Mrs. Mary, Jason, Rachel, Max, and some aunts and cousins. The setting was simple, but full of love and warmth. "Mrs. Mary," Richard said, standing up with a glass of soda in his hand, "I'd like to officially ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." Mrs. Mary smiled with tears in her eyes. "Son, you've already proven yourself to be a good-hearted man. You have my blessing and my eternal gratitude." Then Richard pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple but elegant engagement ring. "Emily Parker," he said, kneeling before her, "will you marry me?" "Yes," she answered, crying with emotion. "1,000 times yes." The ring fit perfectly on her finger, as if made just for her. Jason, Rachel, and Max hugged Richard, officially welcoming him as their brother-in-law. It was a moment of pure family joy. On Friday, they started planning the wedding. Emily wanted something simple, but Richard insisted on a beautiful celebration. "I want it to be an unforgettable day for you," he said. "Richard, your presence alone makes every day unforgettable," she replied, kissing him tenderly. They decided the wedding would be in 3 months, enough time to finalize Ethan's adoption and for Emily to adjust to her college classes. On Saturday, something happened that deeply touched everyone's hearts. Ethan, now 10 months old, clearly spoke his first full words. "Mommy Emily, Daddy Richard." Everyone was moved. Ethan had learned to speak, recognizing them as his parents. "He's so smart," Emily said, hugging the baby. "He's going to go far in life." "With you as his mother, I'm sure he will," Richard replied. On Sunday, they had a family photo session at the park where they'd first met. The pictures showed a smiling Richard, a radiant Emily, and a happy Ethan in their arms. When the photos were ready, Richard chose the most beautiful one to frame and place in the living room, next to Sarah's picture. "Are you sure you want to keep Sarah's photo there?" asked Emily. "I'm sure. Sarah was part of my story and gave me Ethan. You are my present and my future. Both deserve to be remembered fondly." Emily's generosity in accepting the memory of Sarah showed Richard that he had chosen the right person. On Monday of the following week, the lawyer called with exciting news. The adoption had been preliminarily approved. In just 2 more weeks, Emily would officially be Ethan's legal mother. "I can't believe it," she said, crying with joy. "I'm going to officially be his mother." "You already are his mother in every way that matters," Richard reminded her. "Now it'll just be official." On Tuesday, Emily started classes at college. She was nervous but determined. Richard adjusted his work schedule to stay with Ethan while she studied. "How was your first day?" he asked when she got home. "Tough, but good. The professors are excellent, and the classmates were welcoming. Some were surprised when they found out I'm already a mother, but in a positive way." On Wednesday, Michael showed up unexpectedly at the house, but this time with a different attitude. "Richard, I came to apologize properly," he said. "And Emily, I want to apologize to you too. I talked to Mom, and she made me see how prejudiced I was." "Michael, I appreciate the apology," Emily replied gracefully. "Actually, I came to propose something," Michael continued. "My company is hiring in the Human Resources Department. When you graduate, I'd like to offer you a position." Emily was surprised and moved by the offer. "Thank you so much, Mr. Michael. It's an honor. Just call me Michael. We're family now." On Thursday, 2 days before the wedding, Emily received a call that left her deeply shaken. It was from a social worker informing her that Melissa had filed a motion contesting the adoption, claiming she hadn't been consulted as the biological grandmother. "Could this interfere with the adoption?" Emily asked desperately. "Don't worry," Richard's lawyer assured her. "She has no legal grounds. It's just an attempt at emotional blackmail." Still, Emily spent the night awake with worry. On Friday, the day before the wedding, something no one expected happened. Melissa showed up again, but this time accompanied by Jason, Rachel, and Max. "Emily," Jason said, "we brought her here to clear something up." Melissa looked embarrassed and very different from her previous arrogant attitude. "Emily," she said with difficulty, "your siblings made me understand some things. They told me how you sacrificed your life for them, how you took care of Mary when she got sick, how you worked hard to keep the family together." Emily listened in silence. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness after so many years. I know you already have a real mother, but I want you to know I deeply regret abandoning you." "Melissa," Emily said calmly, "I appreciate your words, but I can't simply forget 22 years of abandonment. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to let me into your life. I just want you to know I'm withdrawing the motion about the adoption. Ethan is truly your son, and you deserve all the happiness in the world." Melissa headed for the door, but before leaving added, "You've become an incredible woman, Emily. Far better than I ever was." After she left, Emily felt as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Now nothing can ruin our happiness," Richard said, hugging her. On Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, Emily woke up at Mrs. Mary's house following the tradition of not seeing the groom before the ceremony. The house was full of celebration. Rachel and Emily's friends helped with her hair and makeup, while Mrs. Mary put the final touches on the dress. The dress was simple yet elegant, chosen by Emily in one of the few stores they had visited together. Richard had insisted on something more luxurious, but she preferred simplicity. "You look beautiful, my daughter," said Mrs. Mary, tears in her eyes. "Your birth mother doesn't know what she missed." "Mom," Emily replied, hugging Mrs. Mary, "thank you for teaching me what real love is. Without you, I'd never be the woman I am today." Across town, Richard was getting ready with the help of Michael and Jason, who had become friends after the events of the week. "Nervous?" Michael asked. "Nervous about starting a new life?" "Never," Richard answered, adjusting his tie. "I can't wait to officially call Emily my wife." The ceremony took place at the church Mrs. Mary had attended for years. It was a simple place but full of meaning for the Parker family. When the doors opened and Emily appeared down the aisle, escorted by Jason, who stood in as her father, Richard felt his heart stop. She was radiant, her smile lighting up the entire church. Ethan was in Mrs. Margaret's arms, wearing a tiny suit and drooling on his little fingers. The ceremony was simple and moving. When it came time for the vows, both Richard and Emily had prepared special words. "Emily," Richard said, "you taught me that family isn't just who you're born with, but who chooses to stay with you. You chose to love Ethan as if he were your own son, and I promise to love you every day of my life." "Richard," Emily replied, tears in her eyes, "you gave me the chance to fulfill my greatest dream, to be a mother. I promise to care for you and Ethan with all the love in my heart." When the priest said, "You may now kiss." The entire church erupted in applause. Ethan, as if understanding the moment, clapped his little hands and shouted, "Mommy, Daddy!" The reception was held in the church hall, decorated simply but joyfully. Two completely different families blended in perfect harmony. During the celebration, Richard surprised everyone with an announcement. "I want everyone to know that Emily isn't just marrying me. She's officially adopting Ethan. From today on, his name is Ethan Parker Thompson." Emotion overwhelmed everyone present. At the end of the night, when the last guests had left, Richard, Emily, and Ethan returned home as an officially formed family. "We did it," Emily said, looking at Ethan sleeping peacefully in his crib. "This is just the beginning," Richard replied, embracing his wife. That night, they placed the last of their money into the safe that had been the symbol of their entire journey. But now it was no longer a test of honesty. It was the start of a savings fund for Ethan's future. "Remember when you used to put your own money in here?" Richard asked. "I do. I thought you were struggling and wanted to help. And I thought you were trying to steal from me." They both laughed at the irony of it all. "Richard," Emily said, "can I confess something?" "Of course." "From the very first day when I saw you sleeping in that armchair, I knew you were a man who needed love in his life. I saw the sadness in your eyes, even as you slept. And from the first day I saw you putting money in the safe, I knew you were special. I just didn't know how much yet." 6 months later, Emily was in her 4th semester of college, earning top grades. Ethan was already crawling all over the house and saying several words. A year later, Emily graduated with honors in education and began working at Michael's company, developing training programs for employees. 2 years later, Ethan took his first steps and proudly called Emily Mommy to anyone who would listen. 3 years later, Emily was pregnant with the couple's second child, a girl who would be named Sarah Emily, in honor of the two most important women in Richard's life. 5 years later, the family had grown and thrived. Richard expanded his business, always with Emily as his advisor on the human aspects of corporate decisions. Ethan, now 6 years old, attended a private school where Emily was respected and admired by all the other parents. Her story of overcoming adversity had become an inspiration for many other families. Mrs. Mary lived with them in a house on the same property, caring for her grandchildren and helping Emily with the household. Her health was stable, and she delighted in seeing the family her daughter had built. Jason graduated with a degree in engineering, thanks to a scholarship Richard helped him secure. Rachel was finishing her teaching degree, following in her sister's footsteps. Max had become Ethan's favorite cousin. Michael married an elementary school teacher and often said Emily taught him to value people's character over their social status. One Sunday afternoon, 10 years after that first day, Emily put money in the safe. The family gathered in the garden. Ethan, now 11, played with his sister Sarah, 7, and their youngest brother, Richard Jr., 3. "Mom," Ethan said, approaching Emily, "my teacher asked us to write about our family. Can I say you chose me to be your son?" Emily felt her eyes fill with tears of emotion. "Of course you can, my love, because that's exactly what happened. We chose each other. And I chose the best dad in the world too," Ethan added, hugging Richard. That night, after all the children were asleep, Richard and Emily sat in the same armchair where it all began. "Have you ever thought how different our lives would be if I hadn't pretended to sleep that day?" Richard asked. "I wouldn't have put money in your safe," Emily replied, laughing. "And I would never have discovered that genuinely good people exist in this world. And I would never have discovered that true love really exists." They sat in silence for a moment, looking at their home now full of life and love. "Richard," Emily finally said, "do you think Sarah would approve of our family?" Richard glanced at the portrait of his first wife, which still held a place of honor in the living room. "I'm sure she would. Sarah always wanted Ethan to be happy, and he is. We all are." The safe on the wall no longer held just money, but also letters the children wrote to their future selves, family photos, and little treasures each member considered special. It was a symbol that sometimes life's greatest treasures come disguised as simplicity, and that true love isn't measured in possessions, but in daily acts of care and devotion. Richard had pretended to sleep to test an employee's honesty. Instead, he discovered a woman who was not only honest, but had a heart capable of unconditional love. Emily had placed her own money in a stranger's safe because she believed he needed help. In return, she gained a family that loved her exactly as she was. And Ethan, who had lost his biological mother so young, gained a mother who chose him out of love, not obligation. 10 years later, whenever they told the story to friends and family, it always ended the same way. Sometimes God uses the simplest moments to change our lives completely. A man pretending to sleep, a woman putting money in a safe, and a baby who needed love. 3 simple elements that came together to create a perfect family. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you believe that true love can overcome social differences? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.